This episode of Dorking Out is brought to you by The Shop Around the Corner, New York City's best independent bookstore, ideal for finding your child just the right book.
And the number 9, as in 50 Shades Darker currently has 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I gotta say, I'm surprised it's that high.
Houston, flight is go.
Mila, let's go.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's Dorking Out with Sonia Mansfield and Christopher Allen Smith.
Welcome to episode 34 of Dorking Out, a podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and the stories and culture that we love. That means movies and TV, books and podcasts, and pretty much everywhere else you find stories that interest you. This is the Legion of Love edition. Today, as a special treat, with me is my co-host, professional writer, and author of The Sonia Show, Sonia Mansfield.
Happy Valentine's Day!
Happy Valentine's Day in a totally platonic way. We're married to other people, and for two people in California, one of which lives in San Francisco, our marriages are remarkably traditional.
With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith.
Hello.
Hello. In this week's episode, we talk about the latest installment in the Marvel Universe, FX new show, Legion, which you may or may not know is an X-Men spinoff. And our second segment, in honor of Valentine's Day, we're going to get all mushy on you and share our top 3 favorite love stories. All of that, plus my cold, makes my voice sound awesome, and our favorite headlines of the week. We've got a lot to dork out about, so let's get this podcast started.
That brings us to topic 1, the latest comic book show based on something that came from Marvel. We're not going to get into the deep and complex backstory of rights holders and who owns what and what's connected to what in this. We are just going to try to talk about this new, much-lauded X-Men television show and see where we go. It's on the FX network. It was developed by Noah Hawley, who also developed the anthology series Fargo, which is one of mine and one of Sonia's favorite shows of the last couple years.
Love it.
I had some pretty big hopes for this. Now, Legion, the show Legion, stars Dan Stevens, who it took me almost to the end of this to realize, hey, that's the guy that played Matthew Crawley, and then
it's a pretty different role, to say the least,
in Downton Abbey. And then I kind of said, well, he's slimmed down quite a bit from that. Not to be all size judgmental or whatever, but
yes, he was a huge fatty on Downton Abbey.
Well, no, he wasn't. But that's the thing, is if you slim down, if you take off 30 pounds, for some people, that will completely change your look. This guy looks 10 years younger, and he looks almost like a teenager now. But
true.
Anyway.
He is almost unrecognizable.
Exactly. Now, this show is based on an X-Men comic series called Legion, which is about Professor X's son, who has multiple personality disorder and a bunch of other kind of mutant disorders. And the thing about him is each of his personalities has different superpowers, different mutant superpowers, is my understanding. It was based on Chris Claremont and Bill Sienkiewicz's.
Sure.
We're gonna keep our tradition of not being able to pronounce people's names going on the show.
I'm glad you got to say that one.
That's
and not
right.
Me.
So, Sonia, I'm gonna just throw this right at you.
Oh, okay.
What did you think of the show? This is a big prestige FX show that's been telegraphed pretty heavily by FX for the last 6 months. What'd you think?
I thought I've only seen the first episode.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of weird and kind of creepy, but I really liked it. I got this weird like Wes Anderson Kubrick vibe from it, especially in the scenes in the mental hospital,
Right.
which is like set like in what maybe like a 60s version of the future. It's really weird. Like I
Right.
can't place what time this movie is supposed to be taking place in. It's so weird because right now there are so many superhero and comic book movies out all the time, and they, especially Marvel movies, like have that formula,
Right.
and this does not follow that formula.
Right.
I mean, it's like more than halfway into the episode before we realize that this guy isn't crazy, that he's a mutant.
Right.
And I just really liked it. I think it's kind of like a superhero show for people who maybe don't like shows like The Flash or Arrow or Supergirl.
Yeah.
I think it's really good. I'm looking forward to watching more.
It's interesting. I'm trying to pin down my own feelings about it, because I do believe it is a vastly superior show to the kind of CW constellation of DC Universe shows. It's very well done. It's very cinematic. But I find myself not really caring about it. And I can't, even though I can see that it's a good show. I think part of it is, a couple things. One, this Fox, 20th Century Fox, owns all of the X-Men catalog for the rights to make TV shows and movies of X-Men from Marvel. So this is not connected with the Iron Man, Thor, Incredible Hulk, Captain America, Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
But the other thing is, my understanding is, it's also not connected to Fox's X-Men universe, cinematic X-Men universe. It's just its own thing, even though, Dan Stevens' character's his father is supposed to be Professor X, but who knows if that's
well,
gonna
they
play
haven't
into it.
revealed that yet, so
Right.
maybe that won't be the case.
And it's I've heard mixed things. I believe I heard Noah Hawley say that this is not connected in any way to any of the X-Men movies. And then a couple days later, I think Fox marketing got freaked out or something. I don't know, and they kind of walked it back and made it vague. Well, who knows? We'll see. With the pinky under their lips, maybe we'll find out something interesting.
It sounds like you just didn't connect to it at all.
I think I connected to it, but I'm wondering. Here's the other thing: is I'm beginning to wonder, and hopefully this isn't a portent of things to come on the Dorking Out, is if it's possible to get kind of a story overload. I remember back when I was in college, I was taking a film class, and there's a teacher in there that I really liked. I could talk to him about a lot of stuff. He seemed really cool, but he almost couldn't stand the Star Wars movies.
That's weird.
And my thought was, and I remember asking him, what are you talking about? Those movies are great. What's wrong with them? And he said, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just, I saw all that stuff in the 50s, like with Forbidden Planet, all this stuff. And it's just, I had seen it all before. Like I've seen this movie, and I'm wondering if it's possible. And actually, now I think about it, he was probably around 45, maybe essentially around my age. I'm wondering if it's possible. I've seen this with some older people, where they've just seen so many movies that even the new movies that are really good don't land with them as much, because they've seen all these elements.
Yeah, because they've seen it.
Yeah, the acting here is great. The cinematography is amazing. The editing is really good. The story seems pretty complex and meaty. But I've seen the guy in the mental ward. Is he crazy? Is he not crazy? Oh, it turns out he's in the mental ward, but he's not crazy. And then I've seen the thing where, people are coming and talking to him inside his mind or like inside his memories. Like there are elements of this that we've seen in other places, which is, and usually I'm a huge proponent of, if you're stealing from a bunch of different places, but you're doing it well, then great, more power to you. I'm just wondering if it's just, because it's also a very non-linear storytelling, and in a lot of ways, this is the cutting edge of platinum age television. Everything they're doing very well. It's very heady. You kind of have to untangle it as you watch it, so it's kind of satisfying on a lot of different viewing levels. But it's just, for me, it was just kind of like bleh.
I will say, like, I am a little tired of the non-linear storytelling, and is he seeing stuff? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Like, we kind of went through this with Westworld too,
right?
And it's not always my favorite, but I was very entertained still. And I love Fargo, the first season and the second season, so much that I'm willing to get on board with this one. But I really liked what I saw. I don't mean to sound like I'm crapping all over it because of that, because of the nonlinear storytelling and all that. I still really liked it. I actually thought it was pretty creepy when it needed to be too. Like, he has like he keeps seeing something that he calls like the devil with the yellow eyes. That thing was creepy.
Yeah.
And I want to mention that, David, played by Dan Stevens, meets like a new patient, and her name is Sid. And she's played by Rachel Keller, who is so good in season 2 of Fargo. And she's this new patient who can't stand to be touched. And so, but they become like boyfriend and girlfriend. He asks her, will you be my girlfriend? And she says yes, but you can't touch me.
Right.
And there's this really sweet scenes where they're like walking together and they're like kind of holding on to a cloth, like, between them instead of holding hands. And then they like kind of kiss using their reflections in a window.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really sweet. And it kind of reminded me of Pushing Daisies a little bit with the two leads that couldn't really touch. But I really liked it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the kissing and the reflection scene, because I remember looking at that and going, wow, that is really great. And if I was into this show, this is the moment that I would fall in love with the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are those moments where shows go from, I like this show, to I love this show, to this is my favorite show on television.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're just little meaningful moments that just yank you further and further in love with them. And it was almost like I'm watching somebody else fall in love. It's like, I get it, man. I see where you're going. I see what you like about her, but I just can't. She's just not for me. So have fun, but I'm going home. You stay at the bar. I'm finished. I'm going to go home early, and I feel kind of bad, because it's kind of like,
that is such an old man thing to do.
Well, kind of, it is. And I am wondering if it's just part of the reason I'm talking this out is I'm wondering, why am I not engaging with this? Like, why am I not loving this from top to bottom? On our sister podcast, The Pop Show, I just ran through all of season 1 of The Expanse to kind of catch up, because we were interviewing one of the actors for that. So go over onto episode 40 of The Pop Show, and you can listen to that and our thoughts on The Expanse. But I was liking that show a lot, but it was also kind of a slow burn for me. And I'm just wondering if I've just seen too much genre stuff, if I've seen too many movies, if it's so difficult to engage because I've seen too much. I mean, I hate to say it, but I am starting to wonder, why am I not freaking out?
Maybe the show would benefit from like a binge watching situation for you, where you could watch a couple in a row.
Yeah, it might. And it's funny. This also comes after a weekend, and this is turning into a therapy session for Chris now. This also comes after.
Tell
a
me
weekend.
about your mother.
That's right. Where she took me to the Muppet movie and Raiders of the Lost Ark. So she's great. Anyway, and a bunch of other movies, but those are the ones that I remember. Anyway, so I watched the new Batman movie, the new Lego Batman, and the new John Wick, which are which would be right up my alley. One is, frothy, jokey kids pop culture with a lot of smart, almost Looney Tunes type jokes in it. The other is the Lego movie. No. The other is John Wick, which is supposed to be this fantastic, fantastic action movie. And it's just like, I feel almost like there's a...
You didn't like either of them?
I liked them, but I didn't. But I kind of liked them in a very cold way. Now that we're talking about this, I'm going to go full geek on here. There's an episode of The Next Generation where Data builds a child, and he's trying to teach his child about being human, about living on a starship. And there's a scene where they're throwing a ball back and forth. Or Data throws a ball at her, trying to get her to catch it, and I think it bounces off her face, and then there's a pause, and then she lifts her arm to catch it. Everything's just bouncing off of her, and she's engaging, but it's kind of late, or it's just not fully, and I'm almost feeling like that's what's going on. Wow, now that I'm thinking about it, watching Legion has sent me into a full midlife crisis.
It sounds like it has.
That's what's going on. I can't taste this, Sonia. Taste this. What's wrong with me?
Oh my God, we're quite the pair today. With me all high on my cold meds, and you going through your midlife crisis.
This tastes like toast. My mouth tastes like copper. Am I all right?
Why is my arm tingling?
That's right, pretty much. So
I don't know what to tell you about that.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to up your meds.
That's right. So where are you hoping that this is going? This is supposed to be, I guess, an 8-episode season. It looks like.
I don't really know where it's going to go. I'm like, is it going to turn into more of a formula superhero movie? I don't think it is. Mm-hmm. I really don't know where it's going to go, and that's one of the things I like about it.
Yeah.
I might have we almost could have delayed this review and waited till we saw the first two to really get an idea of what the show's going to be, but we didn't, so we're talking about it now.
Yeah, that's.
But I really liked it, and I actually probably am going to be watching the first episode again with my husband because I watched it by myself, and I'm looking forward to that because I think there's more I'll catch the second time around.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, another thing could be, and we've talked about this previously, I think I just don't like the X-Men that much.
Yeah, that could be too.
I'm just not into them because half of their movies have been pretty good and I really liked, and half of their movies have been either mediocre or aggressively awful. So the charge that you get for a certain storyline or a certain genre thing that, you get when a new Star Wars, for me, new Star Wars, new Star Trek, new whatever comes out, it's like, oh, I'm really excited to see that new Marvel movie. I'm really excited to see that because the others have been so good. This is going to be great. Now, for me, it's kind of well, I like it, but, I don't want to get 4 hours into it and realize, oh, this is a television version of Wolverine.
Not everything is made for everybody.
That's true.
And you can look at it objectively and say, yeah, it's a perfectly fine show. It's just not for me.
That's true.
And that's fine.
But I think we can both agree that my track record indicates this is made exactly for me. And I am not connecting up to it.
Well, then we are split.
I'm sorry. We're split. Sonia likes it. I am perfectly, measurably, philosophically indifferent to this show.
So it's Sonia likes it, and I like it?
That's right. This is the platonic ideal of indifference. That's what it is. Which breaks my heart because if I got to meet Noah Hawley, I would be like, this guy's the greatest. He's done things amazing on television in an era where all these amazing things are happening. He's one of the best. And then, if I got to meet him, but all I could do is ask about Legion, I'd be in trouble.
If season 3 of Fargo starts and it's not super awesome because he was busy working on Legion, then I'm not going to like Legion anymore and it's going to make me mad.
Ooh, you hear that, Noah?
I'm sure he's really scared.
That's a threat from Sonia Mansfield, podcaster extraordinaire. All right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this show?
I say a 7.
7. You know what? I might give it a 7 too.
Stop copying me.
Because, I can see why people would like it. Or you know what it is? Also, it could just be, and this goes back to me being old.
It all goes back to that.
Yeah, that's right. If I had seen this show when I was 20, I would probably be flipping the F out. I would be going nuts. All the interesting, this takes a comic book subject and deals with it in an adult way.
Of course you would flip out. You'd be like, this is totally different than LA Law.
Why are you acting like that? Why are you bashing on LA Law? Go back.
I just love how much you love it. That's all.
You know what? Here's what we're going to do. Share a couple more thoughts about Legion.
No.
And then we're going to have a little bit of a talk about LA Law. Hold on.
I don't want to talk about LA Law.
Let's take a look at accolades. Primetime Emmy Awards for LA Law.
Just because a show wins a bunch of Emmys doesn't mean it's super good.
Yes, it does. In fact, it exactly does.
No, it doesn't.
That's right.
I disagree.
Outstanding Drama Series.
Of course you're going to say that, Emmy
87.
winner.
Outstanding Drama Series. Nominated. Supporting Actor.
You realize
Outstanding
I'm just
Drama
giving you
Series.
Crap. I'm like...
98. I know, but I have to...
Law and Order. LA Law is fine.
Good, sweet Christmas. This thing won Best... Outstanding Drama Series like 4 times. Wow. All right. Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
It's a popular show. Anyway.
So the point is,
you digress.
We love LA Law. We're excited for more episodes.
Let's move on to topic 2.
Want more dorking out? Well, there's a few simple things you can do. First, go to iTunes and give us your 5-star rating and review. This helps us find new listeners. Next, be a good friend and share like your mommy told you to. Simply go to dorkingoutshow.com and you'll find some links to our show which you can post to your Facebook, Twitter, or wherever fine social media links are shared. It's an easy way to impress your friends and make your enemies green with envy. Which is really the point of social media anyway, isn't it? After all, listening to any of the Dorking Out shows means that you're a modern trendsetter. We know, because if audience research has shown anything, it's that the Dorking Out show audience is smarter, more attractive, and less susceptible to baseless flattery than any other audience in the podcasting world. That means that you're the best. It's right here, in the data, which is totally real and not made up in any way. So share our show. You can talk about it with your friends, and we can get new listeners, which means you get more shows. It's the circle of life modified to include podcasting. Point is, please rate us on iTunes and tell your friends. Now, back to the show.
Topic 2. In honor of Valentine's Day, we thought we'd show you a little love and share our top 3 favorite love stories. I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to go first. And I'm going to start with Pride and Prejudice. The book, the movie, the miniseries. I love it in all of its versions. I think it's like the template for most modern romantic comedies. A man and woman meet, they don't like each other, then they love each other, the end. I just love it. I love the BBC miniseries. I love the 2005 movie with Keira Knightley. I love it adapted as Bridget Jones. Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy are my favorite.
So what makes Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy so because I would be willing to bet if you were to poll 100 random women, a lot of them would be loving the crap out of this book.
Yes.
What is the thing about
Cool.
Mr. Darcy?
Funny enough, I cheated on you and was on another podcast.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Book versus movie, and I was talking about my favorite chick flicks based on chick lit books, and we talked about Pride and Prejudice, and one of the things I love about Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy and all their different versions is they really they fall in love with each other's minds. It's not like he's hot and she's hot, so they're going to be together type of thing. They really love each other's minds. They get to know each other and their families, their friends, everything, and fall in love kind of even despite themselves.
Right. All right. I get that. Cool.
I will say that I personally and I talked about this on the podcast too, I'm kind of a spazzy Bridget Jones type, and my husband is definitely a handsome Mark Darcy type. So maybe I just relate a lot.
Oh, all right.
What's on your list? What's one of your top 3?
Well, let me just say that nearly any top whatever list we make on this show, top comedies, top dramas, top romances, top war flicks, top classics, wow. All of those lists, and probably a couple more, could have Casablanca on the top. Bang.
Yeah. Okay.
But this is
the only reason I didn't put it on my list is because I'm for that exact reason. I was then I would just be talking about Casablanca every week.
Exactly. Which is why I'm not doing it. But this is I will acknowledge, and this is not just, everybody has to say Casablanca. Casablanca legitimately is, depending on my mood, the original Star Wars trilogy might be my favorite thing on film. The Godfather trilogy might be my favorite thing on film. Lord of the Rings might be my favorite thing on film. Or Casablanca. That's how much I love these.
Me too.
So I'm not.
I asked my husband, by the way, what was his favorite love story, and he also said Casablanca.
That's right. See, I knew there was something I liked about him.
Yeah, it's an awesome, awesome movie.
That's right. So I'm gonna pick a very late entry, and at the risk of being another cracker critic that likes La La Land, I'm gonna say La La Land.
You know what? I actually entertained putting that one on my list as well.
Now, here's the reason.
So why do you love it?
Because one, it does a fantastic, back in the earlier eras of musicals, they would just be musicals. They would just start singing, dancing. La La Land takes the musical and kind of turns it into a dream. It's almost like for every musical moment, we're getting to see into their hearts, and it's almost like a hallucination of what their relationship is at that moment. So the way that they use music is fantastic. But the thing that I really liked about this is, and this is going to be a spoiler for La La Land, so if you haven't seen it, why don't you skip the next 5 minutes? They fall in love, and they have a really nice relationship, and they don't either wreck the relationship and it's a tragedy, but it's also they don't get together and they don't love each other for the rest of their lives. It's this kind of, they had their moment in the sun. It meant a lot to them. It's not a tragedy that they didn't get married, but it is kind of bittersweet and melancholy.
Yeah.
So it's this really kind of if they had found each other at different times in their lives, you can bet that they would be together forever.
Yeah.
Or if they had found each other at different times of their lives, they would have driven each other up the wall, maybe had a couple of hate makeout sessions, and then that would have been it. But that's right. Hate makeout sessions is the PG version of what everybody knows I mean.
Right.
But it's just, seeing where they go. It's just like sometimes relationships don't work out, and it's nobody's fault. There's no real reason that can be controlled for it. It's just that's the way life is. It's bittersweet. It's melancholy.
Yeah.
It's sad. But it is kind of very romantic because they get to wonderful new places in their lives through this relationship, but the relationship has to end in order for them to kind of go and do what they really truly want to do. So,
Yeah, when we talked about La La Land on the podcast, I talked about how I feel like their relationship is exactly those kind of relationships you have usually in your 20s.
Yes.
That help you form the person you are, or that you become, I should say. And those relationships don't always work out.
Yeah.
So it has this really, bittersweet ending that I think is realistic.
It's realistic, but it's also romantic at the same time, which are two things that are almost diametrically opposed all the time. Because a lot of the stories that we're talking about here, they could either be, they either great movie romances, a disproportionate number of them end with one of the people dying. And actually, one of my honorable mentions that made it nearly to the last version of my list, and I don't care who hates it, was Titanic. Because Titanic is that kind of young, just met somebody, puppy love, fever dream of, romance. Plus, it's this spectacular movie.
Yeah.
Plus,
it's so fun. It's so funny that was almost on your list. You know what was almost on my list was a different James Cameron movie. It was going to be The Abyss,
which is also okay. Yeah. So yeah, which has both has both endings.
Yeah.
One of them dies.
Yeah. The scene where they're trapped in the thing and it's filling up with water and she gets him to put on the suit and she drowns and he tows.
Yeah.
That scene is the most romantic thing ever.
It really is. And that's what's so great about The Abyss is it gets to have it both ways. It gets to have one of the people die, and it also gets to have them kind of live happily ever after and kind of get remarried. Which is,
I don't know how many times I've been sucked into The Abyss on TV. It happens over and over.
An unbelievably good movie. Anyway.
Should I go on to one of my next picks?
That's a long way of saying La La Land doesn't do either of those, and that's why it holds a special spot on my list, because it's happily ever after. It ends at a wedding, and it's also not somebody's dying and freezing in the mid-Atlantic, which now that I think about it, both The Abyss and Titanic have somebody dying and freezing in the mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, right, James Cameron's got something to say.
He does. So what is your next choice?
One of mine is, I guess, I don't know if people refer to it as the Before trilogy.
Yes, so, actually, I think they do.
Before sunrise, before sunset, and before midnight. And I think when it comes to relationships and romance, movies, books, TV shows, they really all focus on the beginning.
Right.
And that's what Before Sunrise is. It's all about that happy beginning. And it's a wonderful movie. It's definitely the one I like to watch the most. And movies like Before Sunset and Before Midnight are kind of what happens after, and they lived happily ever after. And I don't think movies do that enough.
Right.
And so I love it. Sometimes they're hard to watch. Before Midnight is really hard to watch.
Right. And by that, you mean the latest one. We should say, right now it is the Before trilogy.
Yeah.
But it should really be the Before series, because my understanding is all Richard Linklater, Ethan Hawke, and Julie Delpy have all committed to making a Before movie essentially every 10 years until they can't.
I think it's just, I'm fascinated by movies that want to talk about what happens after. Yeah. So it's after the chase, after the excitement is over, you have to deal with real life, and you have to deal with these little things that annoy you about your partner. And sometimes they turn into big things. And there's just not a lot of movies or TV shows or books that deal with that stuff because
Yeah.
it's not as fun or it's not as sexy
Yeah.
and I just really love the Before trilogy. I think it's awesome. And I think I also almost put on this list High Fidelity, which
Oh, yeah.
I think also deals with what happens after
Right.
in a really real way. That he misinterprets like that feeling of new for like that's what love is.
Right.
And that nervous feeling you get from like a new romance and he thinks that's what love is, but really it's what's after that. And that's another really good movie that could have been on this list.
Yeah. Starring John Cusack.
John Cusack,
Which is
going to segue right into your next
that's right.
one.
I'm going to take this perfect
Your next
segue.
one, which is Hot Pursuit.
That's right. My next one, which is Room
Better Off Dead.
1408, where he a middling Stephen King adaptation came out about 10 years ago. No. Anybody that knows anything about big screen romances and John Cusack, they know exactly what I'm going to say, so I'll just say it. Say Anything. This is the ultimate high school love story movie. This is a really sweet, nice, kind of nice guy movie. I think pretty much every quote-unquote nice guy in the 80s that was not a jock but was also not kind of like a rebel screw-up kind of guy loved this movie like crazy and loved Lloyd Dobler, John Cusack's character, because he's nice and he's earnest, but he's not a drip about it. And he falls in love with the valedictorian played by Ione Skye, and it's at the moment that her life is starting to fall apart. So it's just so good.
It is so good.
And what's interesting is it was produced by James L. Brooks, directed by Cameron Crowe, and James L. Brooks produced The Edge of 17 in 2016. And that is almost kind of like a spiritual sequel to Say Anything. It stars...
I need to see it.
You do. It stars Haley Stansfield, who I loved like crazy in the 2010 True Grit. And anyway, so it's just it's perfect. It's just romantic enough to really kind of sweep you away with the idea of love and meeting someone and the romance, but it's also kind of biting enough and real enough so it's not just some ridiculous endless love Bridges of Madison County tripe. It's just it's so good. There's the moment, and I'm sorry, this movie is like 25 years old, so if I'm spoiling it to you, it's your own fault. There's that moment where
if you haven't seen Say Anything, what is wrong with you?
You know what? If you haven't seen Say Anything, you're not my friend. You're not Sonia's friend. You got a problem.
You could still be my friend, but you should go see Say Anything right now.
There's that line that I love, and I wish I had the chance to quote it more, which is, I gave her my heart, and she gave me a pen. And he's talking to all these screw-ups at a 7-Eleven, like one of those high school hangouts.
If you know so much about women.
Why are you all here on a Friday night with no women anywhere?
Why are you guys hanging out at the Gas and Sip on a Friday night? No women anywhere.
And there's that awkward moment where his four screw-up friends kind of have this almost have a moment of realization. They almost see themselves as they really are, but then one of them says, by choice.
Yeah, it's by choice, man.
And then all of them desperately jump on that idea as like, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're choosing to be here because it's our, and then they go back into their, befuddled high school screw-up lives.
Right.
So, yeah, Say Anything is great. It's one of those movies that earns its happy ending. So I almost would like to see a Before Sunrise treatment of Lloyd Dobler and Ione Skye. I would like to see what's going on with those characters at this stage. I do think a lot of this could be sacrilege to say, but there are a lot of movies in the 80s, a lot of high school movies in the 80s that are missing the chance for some very interesting sequels by not making, like, I would kill for a well done sequel to The Breakfast Club.
To 16 Candles.
To 16 Candles, to The Breakfast Club. You know what would be great?
You just want that Uncle Buck. You want an Uncle Buck sequel.
That's right. You know what would be great is a sequel to 16 Candles where they all come back to the high school reunion, and was it Long Duck Dong?
Yeah.
That pretty offensive stereotype.
Oh my God, it's so 16 Candles does not stand the test of time.
Yes, it
I'm
does.
sorry to say.
Half of it does. That's the thing. I'm going to disagree with you vehemently. 3/4 of it definitely stands the test of time. 1/4 of it is like, oh my God, they could get away with this in the 80s. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to see kind of a retcon of Long Duck Dong coming back as a Google tech billionaire and just rubbing all of the snotty, mildly racist high school classmates' faces in it. But anyway.
I am less interested in seeing that.
All right, well. You're trying to deny it. You're trying to act holier than thou, but you know you love that movie.
I am holier than thou. Are you ready for my final pick?
Well, I don't go to church, so it's not that hard. Yeah, what's your final pick?
I don't either. My final pick is When Harry Met Sally. A pretty obvious pick. It's a lot of people's favorite romantic comedy. I think one of the reasons why I love it so much is because even with all their weird like quirks and faults, and they know everything about each other. Like, you know, he says like it takes her like an hour to order a sandwich, you know, all of that. They still love each other.
Yeah.
They fall in love, and they know each other like inside and out.
Yeah.
And they still fall in love, and that's what we all want. We all want to be loved like that.
I think you're right.
And it's just a hilarious movie.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's the best Woody Allen movie not made by Woody Allen out there. But yeah, well, it's also got that fantastic romantic line from Billy Crystal at the end, because it's funny because when Harry Met Sally does a lot of things that bad romances do.
Right.
Which is, it's got them, they're not together, they drive each other crazy, then they fall in love, then they're in love, then something happens to piss them off and break them apart, and you think that they're going to be apart, and both of their montages of both of them moping around, being heartbroken, and then one of them decides, you know what, I love this person, and then they either race to a train, race to a plane, race across
that's
town.
like every romantic comedy.
Race. And they're doing it, but Nora Ephron's script has the perfect line for it, which is Billy Crystal runs in and he says, you know, when you realize that you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible. And it's just such a perfect line that you do believe that Sally would melt right there in front of him and go with him. It was just,
and there's just a million perfect lines.
Yeah. It's
in that movie, and just funny random lines, and Bruno Kirby is so funny.
Yes.
As his best friend, and of course Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
Is so funny, and I love that movie. My sister and I still sometimes will yell "baby fish mouth."
I forgot about that.
It's just one of the random things that we'll like yell at each baby fish mouth.
That's right. Well, you know what? That might be Billy Crystal's funniest 2 hours on Earth. He might have been the hottest he ever was.
How good of a movie is it when it makes you think like, oh, I wish I could get someone like Billy Crystal to fall in love with me.
That's right. See, as a heterosexual man, I get to look at Meg Ryan and go, oh, yeah, I could see that. You have
Yeah.
to look at Billy Crystal.
Yes, not fair. But that's
No.
a testament to how good the movie is.
Not in
that
any way.
it makes him seem like a good idea.
Yes. So
What is your final pick?
my final pick was going to be Titanic. But then I remembered that
It's not very good.
that
I'm
not
just
every,
kidding.
that
I'm
not
kidding.
everything well it does have its necessary detractions. Not everything has to be movies on this podcast, even though I think we fall into that trap a lot of the time.
One of mine was a book.
That's right, which reminded me, hey dummy, you can think of books too. And as soon as I thought of books, I thought, oh, there is one obvious answer standing head and shoulders above the others. And I'm very excited because I believe the second sequel to this book is coming out in 2017. It's about a little fictional British town named Kingsbridge. And this book is Pillars of the Earth, which is the story, almost multi-generational story of just a little town, a wannabe poor mason, named Jack, and a lord's daughter named Alyena. And I definitely, you'll see why I love Titanic, because I am always a sucker for the poor guy falling in love with the rich girl. This impossible romantic task, but because he's so great, because he's so charming, because he's so whatever, it cuts through all of the society, it cuts through all of the fog, and two people that shouldn't be in love find each other in love. This book is probably an unbelievably good textbook for when two people are trying to get together, figuring out conceivable, realistic roadblocks to throw in their path to keep them. I mean, because even after they fall in love, even after they've gotten together, even after they have kids, Ken Follett still finds ways, realistic ways. It takes place in the 1100s, so you get this entire view on, the Catholic Church and England and the wars and the British Civil War and all that, or one of the British Civil Wars. It's fantastic. And all of the obstacles that you can, the church had ways to keep them apart. Their families had ways to keep them apart. Just, the 1100s had ways to keep them apart. It was just one of them becomes a monk. Guess which one? So it's just, oh God, it's just so good. It's so
I've never read it.
And when they get together, it is ridiculously beautiful, ridiculously satisfying. It's one of those romances that I think a lot of television watchers are familiar with, the kind of romances like Friends or Moonlighting or, pick your or Cheers, pick your long-suffering will they, won't they couples on television that once they finally get together, it becomes unsatisfying. There's like a moment of, oh, this is great, they're together, yay, and then it's just like, blah.
Right.
This doesn't do that. They get together in the perfect way, and then it's just good. So it becomes that much more satisfying, that much more heartening. So yes, that is my pick. Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. Fantastic.
Maybe I need to read it.
You do.
Yes.
Definitely.
Do you want to do a couple honorable mentions?
Yeah, let's do that.
Do we have time for that?
Yeah, let's.
I'll be super fast. This one, it's only an honorable mention because I really love the show Friday Night Lights.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an awesome TV show. It's not really a love story.
Mm-hmm.
It's about football and life in this small Texas town in high school and things like that. But the core relationship of the movie is
The show.
Thank you, of the show.
Sorry.
I'm high on my cold meds. But the relationship between Coach Taylor, and that's Kyle Chandler, and then Tammy Taylor, played by Connie Britton, is like this really great example of like a loving, healthy marriage. Like, I think the show was on for 5 seasons. There was never like, well, now we're going to break them up. And they're good. They always had each other's back. They're always super supportive. Like, even when they disagreed, like, they talk it out and work it out, but not in a really, like, lame, like, Brady Bunch way, like, in a really realistic, loving, healthy marriage way. It's like they're a relationship goal for sure.
No kidding.
And I had to give it a shout out.
Oh, definitely. You know what? I need to see that show.
It's a really good show.
I've been meaning to, and it's one of the things that is getting drowned in this deluge of television in the Platinum Age.
And I could have put Casablanca on the list too. That's that, and I could have put like The Thin Man on the list because I really love the relationship there too, even though it's not really a love story. Like, I love Nick and Nora Charles.
Oh yeah. Okay. Shoot. That's thank God I didn't think of that one because that one might have gone on.
What are some of your honorable mentions?
My honorable mentions, one is not really a romance, but it's got a fantastic romance within it, especially in these troubled times. Copyright. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
I love that movie.
I love the movie, and the romance between Jimmy Stewart and I want to say not Gene Smart.
It's Gene Arthur.
Gene Arthur. That's right. It is. Anyway, and I love Frank Capra movies. And Frank Capra movies, It Happened One Night, It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town.
You Can't Take It With You.
You can't Take It With You. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They all have fantastic romances in them. This one's great because she plays a senator's aide who's jaded and beaten up by Washington, and he comes as this kind of dumb, naive, or supposedly
Is she a senator's aide, or is she a reporter?
No, she's his aide. She's the aide of the senator that dies, and he gets picked by the governor to be the senator back when governors could do that. Right. Because he has
the reporter friend.
Yeah. Because he was he's supposed to be a doofus that's easily controlled, but he's so in love with America. He's so idealistic, and he's got that deep he's a nice guy, which people mistake for weakness, but it's not. He's tough, and he takes on the whole Senate, and she falls in love with him as she sees this guy following his ideals to the point where it's destroying him because corrupt Washington is crushing down on him. How is this resonant in 2017?
I wonder.
Anyway, so that's one. And then my other one, you might see the theme here, is Notting Hill, which is
another poor guy goes after a rich woman.
That's right. Actually, this is the rich woman goes after the poor guy, but it is kind of like a ridiculous kind of fantasy. But then it's kind of like, well, actually, now that I think about it, I think Julia Roberts has done this. This might be based on a true story. It is a
very charming movie.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. This was Hugh Grant at the height of his Hugh Grantness, being charming and affable and self-deprecating, and Julia Roberts plays essentially Julia Roberts.
Right.
This big mega star that's shooting a movie in London, and they fall in love through various circumstances. And will they, won't they? Guess. Has there ever been a Julia Roberts movie where heartbreak ends the movie? I want to say Dying Young, but I've never seen it, so I don't know. Actually,
I think he lives at the end, so even that one.
Oh, come on!
Even that had a happy ending.
Oh, that's just lame. All right.
What about Mary Riley? Did that have a happy ending?
Not for the viewers.
We're
out.
Pineapple Princess, he called me Pineapple Princess all day as he played the ukulele on the hill above the bay. Pineapple Princess, I love you, you're the sweetest girl I've seen. Someday I'm gonna marry and you'll be my pineapple queen.
And that brings us to our favorite headlines of the week. I'm going to go first and say that my favorite headline of the week, it's not really my favorite, but you'll see why. American Idol may return, but this time on NBC. And I find this really interesting. It's only been off the air for like a year. It hasn't even been gone long enough for people to miss it. They already have The Voice on NBC, so I don't know why they would want American Idol. But what I think is interesting is I think we're going to get to a point on TV where like it's all like, remember when remember I sound like the
That's
member
right.
berries on South. Remember?
That's right.
Remember when Bush was elected, and around that time, like TV was all like American Idol and like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and like this really like mindless, stupid TV that like is not remotely challenging. I
How
think
did-
we're. I think
How does that connect
network.
up with Bush?
No, I just trying to put in a time frame.
Oh, my mistake. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Just I think there was a lot of. Let me put this delicately.
Just say it. Don't be delicate.
There was a lot of political upheaval when Bush won,
All right.
and we went into a war, and that's upsetting to people. And then people come home and they kind of want to escape.
Got
So
it.
they're just. Does that make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense.
Okay. So then that's when you see like the rise of like American Idol, and that's when like The Bachelor starts and The Bachelorette and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is on like 5 nights a week. Obviously, things are going on in this country right now that are really stressful. And I think like if we see something like American Idol back on TV, I just think we're going to see like the rise of that sort of thing.
Oh, I hope not.
I mean, we already have like The Voice.
Yeah.
And The Bachelor's already still like a huge hit and people super watch it. But like I wouldn't be surprised if we see like more of that, like more game shows,
Yeah.
more like contest driven things in prime time on network TV.
Yeah. You
Because
know. Oh, keep
The
going.
prestige channels like FX and HBO, they're not going to do that stuff. But like network will do it for
Yeah.
sure.
You know what? I hope not. I'm looking for networks to get back to telling stories about humans. And with all the game shows, I mean, some of them are fine, but you're right. Like in the mid 2000s, well, that was the age when all of the quality television was driven off network television. And I don't think,
Right.
One, network numbers have been going down, 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 down ever since. And two, I just think that it'd be nice. It would be nice if the networks. Well, it could just be that it would be nice if networks made shows that I liked. Maybe that's
Right.
my complaint. But
I mean, do you remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was on like 5 nights a week?
It was, yeah.
And then they started Big Brother on CBS,
Yeah.
and that was on like 5 nights a week.
Well, that's the thing.
And then American Idol was on like 3 or 4 nights a week. Like it was.
I
these
do.
shows
and
were. That's all it was.
That's the thing. ABC shot itself in both feet by putting Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on that much, because when the ratings for that started to go, they had essentially canceled. I would say I'm sure I'm exaggerating. They had canceled the majority of their long-running dramas. They'd canceled the majority of their sitcoms. So when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire went into the ground, it's like, we don't have anything. They had to rebuild their entire network.
Right.
I think it took them years to claw themselves back from that.
Yeah.
So
that was my pick. What is your pick?
My pick, I got 2 picks, both of them coming out of Warner Brothers. That's going to be my through line.
Okay.
So Variety is reporting that studio chief Kevin Tuzihara, probably not the correct pronunciation of his name,
I'm going to say that that's correct.
is still looking for a way to essentially let people rent first-run movies the day they come out, or like 2 weeks after their initial release. So, for example,
I'm into this idea.
they would put out, like the next Batman movie. That's a little breadcrumb for the other story. They would put out the the Batman movie, and then 2 Fridays later, you would be able to rent it for like $40 at your house. Now, the reason for the exorbitant rental price, where it's compared to like $6, $7 now, is they would want to still have that big burst of financial return as the movie is out in theaters, but the movie theaters have been clawing at this idea for years. The studios have been eager to do it for the past couple of years, or really been looking for ways to do it. But the theater owners and the Theater Owner Association have basically said any movie that you can get on demand the day that it comes out is not a movie that we're even going to book. They kind of are
Right.
on strike in a lot of sense. And some theater chains will do it, but a lot of the stuff that if you see a movie that comes out in the theaters and like on Apple TV or something the same day, chances are you're not seeing that movie in an AMC theater, you're not seeing it in a Cinemark, Regal,
Well, yeah, they
Cinemark,
can't make money off you buying popcorn if you stay home.
Exactly. So that's interesting. And he supposedly is, and Warner Brothers is supposedly really pushing to make this happen. And in a quote in Variety, Kevin Tujihara says, we're making a lot of progress. We're aggressively working with exhibitors to talk about models that will grow the market instead of cannibalizing the market. Part of the reason that's driving this is consumers and the economics of the film business. It's about giving customers what they want. If we don't give it to them, they're going to go to pirated versions. So there's that. That's what's going on.
Well, as someone who's got still a pretty young child, I am down with this idea because getting a babysitter is expensive and movie tickets are expensive. So to go out to a movie with my husband, I could be dropping like, $100.
Yeah.
So
no, I hear you.
So $40 for a new release is not that big a deal.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's something. The other news, we haven't talked about this, but something tells, later this year when Wonder Woman comes out, we're going to have a big discussion about the DC Expanded Universe. That is the DC Comics version of the Marvel Comics cinematic universe that they're trying to do. A couple weeks ago, it was reported that Ben Affleck, who is playing Batman across these movies, and was being touted when he signed on to Batman versus Superman a couple years ago as essentially the Tony Stark Iron Man of the DC universe. He was going to be in a lot of movies. He was in Batman versus Superman, obviously. Then he was in Suicide Squad. I believe he's also in, there are rumors that he's in Wonder Woman. Then he's going to be in Justice League. For the last year and a half, Ben Affleck has been trying to write and develop a movie called The Batman, which he was supposed to direct. 2 weeks ago, he drops out as a director. Now, rumors are rampant in Hollywood that he is also trying to drop out of playing Batman ever again.
That is so interesting.
It is.
I've said this before. I think this is because Justice League probably really sucks.
You definitely could be right. I really think you're right. Because here's an interesting thing that happens is at the end of last year, in the middle of last year, he was announced as a director, and he kept saying, we're working on the script. I'm not going to do the script unless I think it's good. We're working on the script. And he would go back and forth. Sometimes he would say, well, maybe if the script doesn't come together, I'm not going to direct it. And then 2 days later, he kind of walked those. That was around New Year's. 2 days later, he walked those comments back. And 3 weeks after that, a month after that, he drops out of the movie. And a lot of people
directing it.
Yeah, drops out of directing it. And a lot of people are taking that as the script isn't that good, but Warner's is going forward anyway. He doesn't want to take the hit for it, so he's just going to play Batman, and he's going to let somebody else direct it and take the hit for it being not that great. And now it makes sense, because he's been down this road before of a studio desperate to make a movie, desperate to hit a release date, and then they put out a movie that's awful with Daredevil. He played Daredevil.
Yeah.
He's done this before. He doesn't need, and Daredevil was kind of the beginning of his internal exile in Hollywood, where he became like a punchline for several years until he revealed himself to be a pretty fantastic director. So yeah, I am very interested in what's going on with this. So who knows? We might I might have another favorite headline here in a couple of weeks that he is leaving.
That George Clooney is back and he's playing Batman.
God, that would be so awful. Can you imagine that? Oh, God. Ugh. I don't. You know what? We have to stop this podcast. I don't even want to think about that. Sonia Mansfield, do you have anything you would like to say?
I will just say happy Valentine's Day and goodbye.
Bye!
The Dorking Out Show is on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, where you can find Chris at Jet Jurgens and Sonia at The Sonia Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures at thesoniashow.com and track the slow and creeping progress of Chris's novel and his other hijinks at jetjurgens.com. You can find out more about the Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.
This has been a production of RocketSpots.tv.